Carolina Catholic Apostolate, built to communicate how to better learn, love, and live our Catholic faith. We begin with our name change to Carolina Catholic Media. This reflects the expanded scope of Carolina Catholic Radio to include the development of our podcast, streaming, social media, YouTube, and direct marketing platforms. 2022 is a very important year for the Catholic Church. As a result, Carolina Catholic Media will feature more local news, information, and conversation to reflect what's happening now and how it impacts our local Catholic community. Throughout the year, Carolina Catholic Media will showcase our Catholic schools and homeschools, the Charlotte Diocese 50th anniversary, and the 2-year worldwide synod process that begins on the diocesan level. We encourage you to get involved, join us, and catch the spirit. The Carolina Catholic Media Apostolate is a 501c3 nonprofit. We are 100% funded by you. Please consider a donation, monthly tithe, or business sponsorship to support our mission and vision to spread the truth of Jesus Christ and our Catholic faith across the Carolinas. Thank you for discerning a role in our apostolate. May God bless you abundantly.
This is Carolina Catholic Media Showcase.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this very special episode of the Carolina Catholic Media Showcase. My name is Bill Snyder, and as you can see, I am joined by Matt Swaim. He is the co-host of the Sunrise Morning Show. Welcome, Matt, to this very special episode.
Hey, thanks for having me, Bill.
Absolutely. And so, Matt, I would love to just open the conversation with, your journey to radio. We've been doing these as kind of like behind-the-scenes spots on the EWTN host, and so it's super cool to get to have that behind-the-scenes time with you today to talk with you about your life and how you came to radio. So I would love for you just to talk a little bit about your journey.
Yes, so my journey towards radio begins as me being a little kid living in various places surrounding the Cincinnati area. So that includes the Louisville area, Southwest Ohio, Central Kentucky, all of which had regional access to Cincinnati Reds baseball games. And I don't know if you know this, but the only sport that really truly makes sense on the radio is baseball. And I grew up listening to Marty Brennaman and Joe Nuxhall on the radio. And I thought, man, these guys have an amazing gig. They just get to talk about what they're seeing, make it sound interesting. And it seemed like they're painting word pictures. They're bringing you into the conversation. You feel like you're sitting next to them. I fell in love with radio through Cincinnati Reds baseball and sort of classic baseball broadcasting. Fast forward to my high school youth group years. I was a member of the Church of the Nazarene and fell in love with Christian music, and specifically kind of underground Christian. This is going to be the weird part of the interview. Underground Christian, kind of like heavy music, punk and metal and alternative. This is the early 90s. And there was a radio station. I listened to a little bit of the sort of CCM, fare, but the adult contemporary stuff. But I really liked the loud stuff. And there was this Christian radio station that was based out of Troy, Ohio. And on Friday nights from 7 p.m. to midnight, they would have this Christian rock block. And I would listen and I would record stuff off the radio. And I felt like I was part of this sort of family. Much like with baseball, the way that I interacted with radio was always kind of understood in the context of a community. So when I went on to college at Asbury College and pursued a degree in media communications, everybody around me, this is like late 90s, early 2000s, is getting into multimedia and digital nonlinear editing, which was still fairly new, and all these other things. And I just wanted to do radio, and everybody was like, man, what are you talking about? Radio is going to be dead by 2002. And I was like, no, but I love radio. It's the most intimate of the media outlets that we have. And so I continued to pursue it and did some local radio and that sort of thing. I went on to do a few other things, but later on I became Catholic and found out that Catholic radio is kind of a thing. The area where I'd become Catholic was Cincinnati, and in Cincinnati, they had Sacred Heart Radio, which has just started up in 2001. And I was trying to figure out how to plug into the Catholic world, right? Now that I'm this baby Catholic and, nobody's saying hello to me after Mass, and I don't know how to like make friends. And so my wife, who's a cradle Catholic, said, well, why don't you just call up the local Catholic radio station and see if you can volunteer? So I called up Bill Levitt, who's the station manager at Sacred Heart Radio. And I said, hey, this is my background. I'm a new Catholic. And is there anything I can volunteer to do? And Bill Levitt, as he tells me, down the road, said that he was so excited to find out that A, there was somebody in his listening area with radio experience, and B, someone listening to Catholic radio who was under the age of 90. He called me directly into the office and we started a working relationship. And at that point, just did local stuff. A couple years later, Brian Patrick had just stopped as an anchor on the ABC morning television affiliate and was a Catholic, and we got together and founded the Sunrise Morning Show. And a year after we founded it, EWTN picked it up and broadcast it, syndicated it. And this is 2007. A whole lot has happened in Catholic media since then. Yeah. Around that time, I think syndication for us meant we were on like 20 EWTN affiliates. Today it's something like 400, yeah. Right?
Right.
So all these people, I just say all that to say, all these people who are like telling me I'm a dummy for wanting to get into radio because radio is dead. I just want to say radio is alive and well.
Yeah.
And it's still an intimate medium, and it's still a way to really truly connect with people and bring them in and feel like you're in a family. Facebook, Twitter, those are nice ways to yell at each other. Radio, there's like a connection. There's a conversation, and you're in it. And I think that's something beautiful about radio.
Yeah, absolutely. I always use the term public conversation when I talk about radio because that's what it is, right? And it's fascinating. You have such a similar journey to myself. I grew up in Philadelphia watching the Philadelphia Phillies play baseball and listening to Harry Callis on the radio, another radio Hall of Famer. And so it's just, but radio is not dead, even though we've got all these amazing streaming platforms that we are on now. I mean, radio is still it. And I want to encourage our listeners here in the Carolina area, if you're watching this on YouTube right now, head over to the 1270 on your dial when you're in the car, because not only will you hear Matt's show in the morning, you're going to hear all of our local programming that we do for the Carolina Catholic Media Network. But Matt, I would love to find out a little bit more about the particulars of the Sunrise Morning Show and just the structure of it. You mentioned, it was, you guys did it sort of as a local show first, and then it got picked up by EWTM. But tell us, what's the flavor of the show?
Yeah, so when we started off, there wasn't really a Catholic morning radio show on EWTN. What they were tending to do, what a lot of stations were doing, was they were taking Catholic Answers Live, which is an evening call-in show, and then just replaying it in the mornings, which Catholic Answers Live is, it's the gold standard of Catholic radio. It was at the time, it still is. But it's not a morning radio show in the sense that the way that people use morning radio is they're looking for news, weather, sports, current events, all the little pieces of things that you need to know as you're heading out the door. And very often, the way that morning radio and television, for that matter, are structured they know, the programmers know that you're going to be getting up at the same time every day, in theory. You're going to be leaving for work at the same time every day. In theory, you're going to be in the car for the same amount of time every day, in theory. So if we got you for the same half hour every day, we want you in that cycle to be able to get, like 10 things you can use. And so that was kind of the approach to doing the morning show, is so that anybody who popped in, if we only had them for a half an hour, we didn't want to stick them on one half an hour conversation on one topic. We want to let them know what was going on in the church, what was going on in the world, maybe a little piece of insight on a scripture, a little piece of history. In our case, maybe stuff about parenting or marriage, just jam it all in. and have fun with it, because that's also kind of a hallmark of morning communications. We wanted to have fun with it, but we also didn't want to be cheesy about it. So in the course of an hour of the Sunrise Morning Show, we get 4 live guests, we get 2 full newscasts, we get 2 headline updates, we get, depending on what day it is, we get This Week in Catholic History, we get a film review, we get a Bible study segment, we get updates on the culture of life, we get a little bit of everything. And so when I'm on an airplane and somebody asks me what I do, and then they ask me what kinds of things I talk about on the radio, I said, well, we just talk about the stuff that our Catholic faith touches, which is basically everything. Like nothing is off the table. It's because, I mean, that's kind of one of the visions of the show too, was that we don't want us as Catholics to be like, Catholicism is this thing that we do inside the church building, and then the rest of the world we're off to fend for ourselves the other, however many hours of the week. We want it to be clear that we are unified wholes. We are people who eat and work and play and watch baseball games. You watch the abominable Phillies, I watch the glorious Cincinnati Reds, whatever it happens to be. People care about these things, and there's an angle that the church has to speak into every single one of those situations. And we've had professional baseball players on the radio show talking about their faith in the game of baseball. We've had Olympians, we've had actors, we've had musicians, we've had moms and dads. So it's to me, it's just a chance to invite people into a conversation and remind them Catholicism touches everything. And I mean everything.
Yeah, that is so beautiful, Matt. It's amazing to hear, how you really want to integrate the faith into people's lives every day. You mentioned, that Catholicism is not something we just do on Sundays for 1 hour a week, and that's awesome. The other thing I think that's nice about the morning format is that it's there's not a whole lot of pressure or heavy, doctrinal stuff. Of course, you can be talking about that, and you can bring up those serious issues, and like Roe versus Wade, all those different decisions and whatnot. But you're doing it in such a way that's maybe practical, and that's going to give people some tips in their life. What kind of feedback do you get from listeners that are listening?
I mean, we get fantastic feedback. Oh, no, we don't get as voluminous of feedback as other places, because a lot of our people are getting ready for work and school. One of the things that we joke about is sometimes people will ask, well, why don't you guys do listener call-ins on your morning radio show? And I always say, listen, man, if somebody's calling in to a morning radio show at 6:30 in the morning, it's because they don't have anywhere to be that day. Right. So we're not talking to the person who doesn't have anywhere to be that day. We're talking to the people, the commuters, right? The people who are heading out into the world. And those people, when they get a free second, they say how grateful they are, right? Or the little tidbit of something, or the little apologetics nugget, or the little parenting tip, or the little way to heal a relationship. And we do hit the doctrinal stuff, but the way that we hit it is a little bit differently than you might get it at Catholic Answers, where you get Jimmy Akin to like sit down and just really dig into something. For example, right now we're doing a series with Father John Gavin, a Jesuit priest, on the Nicene Creed through the lens of the Church Fathers, and we're taking like 3 words at a time. So we're doing a 7-minute segment on the Creed, but we're only doing 3 words of the Creed in that segment, right? But in that, you get to dive deep into one little piece, right? One little piece of the Creed that you hear every single Sunday, that hopefully you'll hear a little bit different now after getting that nugget. So it's a lot more about nuggets, and this is how it's different also than afternoon drive time. Like afternoon drive time, you'll notice the segments are longer. The topics are deeper. You go in a deeper dive with them, because that's the time of your day when you've shaken off all the junk from the workday, and now let's figure out what happened in the world, and let's meditate and reflect on it. We're more like send you out the door with everything you got to have in your backpack radio. That's what we are.
Yeah, no, it's really a wonderful show, and I certainly have listened to it on my commute for many years. It's just a great program, and so folks, Matt, tell us what time it's on Eastern time for us.
Yeah, 6 to 8 Eastern, through any EWTN affiliate, including yourselves, and of course sunrisemorningshow.com is where you can hit all the archives. But yeah, I mean, it's a really cool thing to be a part of it, and to be a part of it in so many different pieces of the country too. That's one of the other neat things about it as well, is that we've got guests from like everywhere. Right. We got guests with Jersey accents, guests with South Carolina accents. We got guests with British accents and Australian accents. And it really, I think too, because of that and because of the way that we're able to involve so many people, it really does also kind of give that feel. You're in a universal church. You're not just going into your world solo, thinking the whole world is against you. Like there's like a billion of us worldwide, right? And that's a big part of it too.
Absolutely, and it's one of those things that brings us together, and as you mentioned, in a different way than social media does, right? And so that's so awesome. I would love to spend a little bit of time focusing on your other work as well, because you have your work with the Journey Home Network, and if you can talk a little bit about that, because it's such a powerful thing. One of the things Catholic radio does, as we kind of talked about, is how it brings people back to their faith, and as they're listening, it triggers those things. And then I think the other really cool part about your story is that you get to really focus on that journey home after it's kind of been sparked through the Catholic radio.
Yeah, it's really neat. So the Coming Home Network is this independent apostolate that since 1997 has been producing a television show, which is also a radio show. They broadcast the audio on Catholic radio, called The Journey Home, and many of our listeners are very familiar with it. And what's wild about it is that for 25 years, it's been this primetime cable television show, nationally syndicated radio show, featuring somebody every episode who nobody's ever heard of, right? And people love it because there's something fascinating about how the way that the Holy Spirit works in people's lives that you may not even know a thing about this person other than just the stuff that they tell you. I mean, sometimes these people have books, most of the time they don't. And just hearing the story of like where they were, how God was working in their life to build a relationship with God with them, and how that was through a series of incidents and events and encounters and insights, how they found their way to the Catholic Church. And I think that's so important for so many reasons, because as a Catholic, I value extremely highly the apologetics resources we have on Catholic radio. Those are great for us Catholics because it helps us who already believe know what and why we believe. But for people who don't yet believe, sometimes they need to hear somebody's thought process who didn't used to believe all this stuff, right? And that's the beauty of it, to be able to share those stories. The Journey Home, again, we've done well over 1,000 episodes now with people who are Baptists, people who are Pentecostals and Anglicans and Methodists and Presbyterians, people who were pastors in those denominations, people who were atheists, people who were Catholics and left the church and didn't just leave the church, but left the church mad and have come back. I think it's just an incredible thing to be able to share those stories, because in those stories, we see a little bit of ourselves, right? We see a little bit, when we hear that path of discovery through somebody else's story, it helps us maybe, see something about our faith that we didn't really see that way before. But also it's an interesting thing too, because, you and I know the Catholic Church is the one true church founded by Jesus Christ, right?
Yeah.
It is the church.
Right.
And yet through that program, we're able to be nicer to Protestants than just about anything else that has ever been done in Catholic media, because we're giving people a chance to like really share what it is that they used to believe and why, which helps then when I go talk to my Baptist friend, because I know now better what's going through my Baptist friend's head, because I know a Baptist who used to be like that, and I know what worked on them. So yeah, it's an incredible thing to be a part of.
Yeah, that's amazing. I wonder, with the breadth of episodes that you've seen from vast majority of people, are there any common denominators that stand out? Obviously, you've got all these different walks of life, but are there any common denominators that stand out from these people who are journeying home?
Yeah, one, grace. But that's the thing about it is, it's always grace. I mean, because you can make the same argument to two different people, and one person the light bulbs will go on, and the other person it won't. But I think the cool thing is that it shows that there's one church, but there's like 100 doors, right? So some people come in through the door of beauty, right? Like they're compelled by the beauty of the liturgy, the beauty of church architecture. This is my road, the beauty of Catholic literature. So some people it's that, but other people, it can be the church's moral teachings, believe it or not. That you'd think that'd be the thing that drives people away, because some of those moral teachings are hard, right? In 2022 to wrap your head around. But some people, they know that something's wrong with the way that the world is working, and they find something refreshing in the way that the church understands the human person. Or some people just have they walk into a church as a tourist and they feel this overwhelming sense of the presence of God radiating out of that gold box at the back that they don't even know what it's called, right? There's 100 different doors that people come into. And I think what it's taught me is that so often my temptation is to think about what I'm going to say to someone to convince them. And how it's oriented me is to do a better job of listening for what someone's hungry for. Because if I'm giving them a cheeseburger and they're in the mood for spaghetti, that's not going to work, right? I need to these stories help me understand how to listen better to what it is that somebody's actually looking for, because no matter what it is, the church has got the answer. Right? I just got to figure out what the question is.
Right, absolutely. I've always said for a long time, I might be a knife, and you're looking for a spoon. So, got to find the spoon to serve you the right
Yeah,
food.
go talk to my friend, the spoon.
Exactly.
Let me introduce you to.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many different, ways to come in, and that's beautiful. I'm wondering also, Matt, if just, touch a little bit on for our listeners, because, the Holy Spirit is making divine appointments right now with whoever's listening in the car, who is ever watching this on YouTube. And so, whatever walk of life they might, they might be drifting right now. We don't know where they are in their life, but, maybe they're drifting, maybe they're really rock solid. Maybe just give some advice to people about, how they can live their faith in a deeper way if they're struggling, or if they're struggling with a certain aspect of their faith right now.
Yeah. There's something that, Moses says to the children of Israel, as he's kind of giving them a pep talk on the law. And he says that the word of God is very near you, right? It is in your hearts. It's in your mouth. It's on your lips. And that is, I think, something that, in our world that's full of false dichotomies and either ors and whatever, that the church is like this. It's this both and, right? It's a church that recognizes through the guidance of the Holy Spirit the beauty of free will, but also the question of determinism and faith and works, and recognizes a church that's full of families with 10 kids and celibate priests. There's this church it's so much bigger than I think that a lot of people realize, and it touches everything, right? Christ did not come down with an overhead projector and walk us through some interesting ideas about the Father, right? He came on, took on our human flesh, walked and talked with us, ate with us, died for us, bled for us, and then left his body and blood for us, because what we are made out of matters. We're whole people, and God didn't just come to change our minds. He came to save our entire selves. So I would just say, Catholic radio is such an important tool to help you figure out, well, what does that look like in my marriage? What does it look like in my parenting? What does it look like in my workplace? What does it look like in my media choices? What does it look like in the way that I cook, and the way that I garden, and the way that I spend my leisure time? Because I think that sometimes the temptation can be to be like, well, I need to do a better job of living out my faith. I better go buy the thickest, most daunting book possible and read it, right? Or I better pray 30 rosaries a day. When in fact, sometimes it's a lot simpler than that. Sometimes it's just allowing God to move in the places where he already is, and recognizing where he already is. Because again, the church touches everything, and having your eyes open to that can really be just a life-giving thing.
So beautiful, Matt. It's an honor to talk with you and just hear your vision, for the church and hear your vision for the faith. Such a fascinating conversation with you today. So thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Carolina Catholic Media Showcase.
Hey, well, thank you, Bill. And, you and everybody else doing Catholic media on the ground level in towns are the real heroes. I got to say, man, one of the things that I tell people when they're brand new baby Catholics coming to us at the Coming Home Network and saying, how do I plug in? How do I meet Catholics? I'm like, listen to Catholic radio, listen to the commercials, figure out what the events are, go to them, meet the people. These are the people who are on fire for their faith, who know what the faith is, and who are a community locked and loaded and built in for you to join. So you guys are doing amazing work.
Oh, man. Thank you so much. And for all of our listeners at home, remember that you can listen to us on 1270 AM if you're not listening on the radio right now. You're watching us on YouTube or streaming it on Facebook or however you're getting us. Remember, as Matt said, you can just tune us in 1270 AM in the Charlotte area. So, folks, thank you so much for tuning in today, and we hope that you have a blessed day, and may God continue to bless you and your families.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Carolina Catholic Media Showcase. For more information about us and to support our nonprofit mission of broadcasting the message of Jesus Christ, visit carolinacatholicradio.org and follow, friend, and like us on social media by searching for Carolina Catholic Radio.
2022 is bringing many new and exciting changes to our Carolina Catholic Apostolate, built to communicate how to better learn, love, and live our Catholic faith. We begin with our name change to Carolina Catholic Media. This reflects the expanded scope of Carolina Catholic Radio to include the development of our podcast, streaming, social media, YouTube, and direct marketing platforms. 2022 is a very important year for the Catholic Church. As a result, Carolina Catholic Media will feature more local news, information, and conversation to reflect what's happening now and how it impacts our local Catholic community. Throughout the year, Carolina Catholic Media will showcase our Catholic schools and homeschools, the Charlotte Diocese 50th anniversary, and the 2-year worldwide synod process that begins on the diocesan level. We encourage you to get involved, join us, and catch the spirit. The Carolina Catholic Media Apostolate is a 501c3 nonprofit. We are 100% funded by you. Please consider a donation, monthly tithe, or business sponsorship to support our mission and vision to spread the truth of Jesus Christ and our Catholic faith across the Carolinas. Thank you for discerning a role in our apostolate.